You're watching the Sports Central Showdown.
Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Central Showdown with Alex Hutton, Graham Metzker going head-to-head. Today's topic is, are the Stanley Cup playoffs the best playoffs? Alex, what do you got?
Absolutely, the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best playoffs in sports. You're seeing it just this year right now as of us taping this. We're only in the first round. I believe already we've had 10 overtime games. That is 10 games in one round where everything hangs in the balance on one bounce, on one little fluky play, where you're hanging on the edge of your seat on every single shot. And 3 of those games have gone into multiple overtimes as well. So that's even these marathons, these stories that all these players and these fans come out with from all these games they've attended, the excitement of that, the possibility for these upsets and all these thrilling moments constantly throughout all 4 rounds. I don't think there's anything like that in sports.
Graham, you beg to differ?
I do, Jamie. I just don't think that the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best playoffs in sports. There's just so many other places to go, whether you prefer a 7-game format. Me personally, I love single elimination, and that's why my pick for the best postseason is March Madness. I mean, it's got a whole month named after it. I've never heard of April hockey, May hockey. That just doesn't roll off the tongue quite right. I love March Madness. When we're watching the playoffs, there's a few things that you want. You want drama. Well, there's no more drama than a buzzer beater. Even the press conferences, the post-game conferences are good, are must-watch TV in March Madness. That's how good the postseason is. You also don't want to know who's going to win the game. We've seen 16 seeds beat 1 seeds. We've seen double-digit seeds go all the way to the Final Four. We've seen an 8 seed win the championship. And lastly, that's really crucial for a postseason, in my opinion, is even if you're not a big fan of the sport, you can get into it at the right time. You can know nothing at all about college basketball and jump in and root for the lower seed or root for the bigger seed to go down. That's the magic of March Madness. And I just don't feel like if you're not a hockey fan, are you jumping into the Stanley Cup playoffs? I don't think so.
So, Graham, you want to talk about unexpected outcomes, unpredictable, low seeds winning? How about this? Since the 2004-2005 NHL lockout, 6 different President's Trophy winners have lost in the first round. That is upsets at their finest. That is so much exciting. You want to talk about low seeds winning? How about the 8 seed Los Angeles Kings winning the Stanley Cup in 2012 and then 2 years later doing it as the 3rd place team in the Pacific Division? One of the things with this new format where it's organized by division means you get some of those lower seeds making those runs because, those teams might not run into the very best team right away and they can build up some momentum and create those deep runs that they might not get if they had to. And yeah, I know there are arguments for and against this current playoff format, but one thing it does is it makes for really exciting first round matchups when you've got teams like the Minnesota Wild and Dallas Stars, who both had great seasons this year, going head to head in the first round right now. You look at the excitement of it and getting the casual fan into it. I would argue that if you want to get someone into hockey and into sports in general, show them one period of overtime playoff hockey where one goal can completely change everything, which means that every single shot, everything that even comes remotely close to looking at the net gives you excitement and thrills and makes your heart race and your stomach jump. That is one of the most exciting things to watch in all of sports.
Alex, it's tough to go against you when I hear that passion in your voice, especially when you bring it up my LA Kings, man. That's tough for me to go against. But you can't sit here and tell me that an 8 seed beating a 1 seed is better than a 16 seed beating a 1 seed. I mean, we got 15s and 2s. I mean, I would even say a 12 over a 5 is a bigger upset in the grand scheme of things than a 1 versus an 8. And you talked about the new format for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Well, what if I told you that the most watched NHL produced game was not even a Stanley Cup playoff game? It was from the Four Nations face-off. Is it possible that the best hockey playoffs are not even the Stanley Cup playoffs, Alex?
Well,
that is a very good point. The Olympics and the Four Nations have both been tremendously exciting to watch, and playing for your country is a whole different ballgame. I don't know, does that count as a playoffs in the same way that the Stanley Cup playoffs and March Madness do, or is that its own separate category? Is that its own special thing? I'm not sure.
I think it's its own separate thing, but the point stands, Alex. How can we say that that's the best hockey in the land when it's not even the most viewed?
Well, I think that the Stanley Cup playoffs also offer their own form of national pride. When no Canadian team has won the Stanley Cup since 1993. And the Stanley Cup itself, the actual trophy, is an icon. When everybody is playing for that, when it's so well known, I think that trophy sets itself apart as its own thing as well.
That's
true.
another
We don't
one.
say the Vince Lombardi playoffs. That is a good point. Or the Larry O'Brien playoffs.
I do love the Larry trophy, but Alex, I won't go against you on that one. The Stanley Cup trophy is just amazing. I would argue, though, give me a trophy that's made out of solid gold. Give me the World Cup trophy, another one that I'm taking over the Stanley Cup playoffs. Another one where you see the nations coming together, going against each other. But a lot of times, especially watching the World Cup, you see the nations come together and have fun before the games, throwing the pasta at the Italy fans if they would have made the World Cup this year, of course. But I think that I would put the World Cup over that too. And when you just see the energy, the passion of the fans in these two sports, March Madness and the World Cup especially, I just think that it doesn't match. The specialness of those events is much greater.
You mentioned the World Cup. I certainly the international pride that you talked about is a huge factor. But to me, I find hockey, the fast pace of hockey, so much more exciting to watch than the slower pace of soccer. So I think that's a point in the favor of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And you mentioned in the NCAA tournament the upsets, and I say this as someone who loves March Madness and loves watching those upset kind of games. But when you come down to it, 90% of NCAA champions since the 64 team format began have been 1, 2, or 3 seeds. So there ends up ultimately in the long run being a lot of chalk, whereas in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you do get those lower teams winning it or at least making the finals a lot of the time, which is an unbelievably exciting thing. Because when you start out with that 16-team bracket, you can kind of make the case for any team to, ride a hot goaltender or just find something at the right time and take that all the way to the championship.
All right, guys, last shot on goal. Each of you, go.
I just love the wackiness of March Madness. And I think at the end, there's an argument that you are getting the best basketball team in the nation. Yes, Alex, the underdogs do start to fall off at the end. But when you put 64, soon to be 72 teams all on one court and let them duke it out, I think that you get the most bona fide, the most legitimate champion. That's what I'm looking for in my postseason.
When you look for a postseason, Graham, you want some unpredictability and you want some greatness to rise up. The Stanley Cup playoffs provides both of those while also giving you a format and an opportunity to where you need to watch every second of every game to get the best experience possible out of it, because when you score 1 point at a time, everything can ride on one bounce or one move, and that's the best playoffs there is.
You're watching the Sports Central Showdown.